Welcome to the Christie Taylor Show. I'm your host, Christie Taylor. And yes, I am relishing in this autumn weather. And as a matter of fact, I've been feeling so reminiscent until I wanted to kind of flash back to one of my favorite things I love to do, and that's poetry. And for whatever reason, when seasons change, I get real reflective. And one person that I've always enjoyed when it came to reflection and poetry is a young lady from Memphis who's now East Coast that I'm super excited to have on the show. And that is talking about Kezia the poet. Kezia the poet, she is an author and so much more. Kezia A. Snipe, a Memphis native, credits God and writing for saving her life. After receiving a journal from her godmother at age 7, Kezia finally believed she'd found the space to express herself and record her thoughts. The first thing she ever wrote ended up rhyming, and nearly 30 years later, poetry is still her outlet. A textbook introvert, Kezia didn't initially jump at the chance to be a part of her high school speech and drama, but after a conversation with her would-be drama coach and mentor, Miss Lewis Bennett, Kezia took the leap that would eventually propel her into spoken word poetry. Kezia has been an active spoken word artist professionally for 15 years. Now, she has traveled from coast to coast, sharing her work, and has released 3, did you hear me? 1, 2, 3 spoken word albums, a collaborative poetry book, and a personal poetry anthology. Now, she currently resides on the East Coast. Yes, she still reps the 901 and is active in community, the arts, and youth advocacy. Now, we are super excited to discuss the release of her new children's book that's going to be coming in 2022 and her 4th spoken word album, Girls and Elephants. I want you all to help me welcome to the Christie Taylor Show, Kezia the poet. Now, do we still go by Kezia the poet? Because that was your 901.
It's either way. It's Kezia the poet or Kezia, either one.
Kezia, well, yes. Welcome to the Christie Taylor Show. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. Now, I was trying to remember how we met. And it's been a minute. We've known each other a long time, yes, way before you left.
Right.
And, we've kind of left the 901 a couple of times, and it's always been a joy.
Likewise.
It's always been vibes, as they say, good vibes.
Good vibes,
definitely
right.
A lot of reflection, poetry, and all the good stuff. So let's get to it. For those who may not have the joy of knowing who you are, kind of give us your short bio, your short story on the growing up.
Oh man, like Christie said, a native Memphian. That's where I was born and bred, and I have loved poetry most of my life. Like the first thing I ever wrote as a child, I started writing when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So the first thing I ever wrote as a child ended up rhyming, and I'm like, well, I think this is how it should always be. Things should rhyme, and so it's poems. And I am like Christie said, like a youth advocate. Absolutely. I've worked in a lot of different fields with different children from different backgrounds in different ways, and also serve as a writing coach for people who are looking to, build upon their craft or really explore writing as an option for them. So that's something I do as well. And I'm pretty, I'd have to say, and it took me a while to realize this, I'm pretty multifaceted. I do a lot of different things, but almost all of them relate back to writing and art and creativity. So
now I love part of your bio that I read, that a godmother gifted you a journal, and there you found, I like the way your bio said it, the space, that space. Can we talk about that space as a creative? Absolutely. And I know that's going to be a space that you learn how to live in comfortably, but when you first get into the creative space where you feel at home, how does that feel? What can you remember? I guess that's what I'm really trying to say. What can you remember about that? And I know with you coaching, how do you help others get into that space?
So for me, there was a lot of things kind of going on in my little life, excuse me, at 7 years old that I just didn't understand. Things I did not understand, like my father was sick, and there were different like financial struggles and different things that were happening that I didn't understand. I knew that I was different. I knew that I kind of thought different and saw things differently. And I would scribble little drawings every now and again. I would read a lot. I was a big reader growing up, but I needed like an outlet. And so when she gave me that journal, and she gave me the journal, and then she gave me suggestions on what to do with it. She's like, write down your feelings. And so I I imagine at that time, just like I am now, I was a child with a lot of big emotions, and needed a way to get them out. And so she's like, write down how you feel. And so the first thing I wrote ended up rhyming. And it was literally that journal literally created the space for me. And I'm like, so it was like a revelation, like there is room for me somewhere. There is room for me. And it wasn't until years later when I realized that while I was making room for myself, I was also making room for others. I never saw poetry as anything beyond that journal. And it wasn't, I mean, I didn't go to my first poetry reading until I was in my 20s. And prior to that, if I hadn't joined the speech and drama team, there's no way I would have had the confidence to stand on stage in front of anybody. And so it wasn't, it seemed like it was so small, just like receiving a journal and, write down your feelings, write how you feel in the journal. But becoming this, so I was, without realizing it, I was creating space for myself. And when it comes to coaching and helping other people, one thing because my coaching sessions are, and this is no brag on me at all, but my coaching sessions don't feel like coaching sessions, because one of the big things that we do is one of the things we focus on is how you're feeling. We focus on emotion, because art is nothing without emotions. It just isn't. Creatives literally pour themselves into their art. So you get the heartbreak, you get the mental breakdown, you get the happiness, you get the sadness, you get the anxiety, you get all the feelings in the work. And so all of my coaching sessions start with a check-in. Tell me about your day, or tell me about your week. Let's unpack some stuff. What's been on your mind? And then we might, go into, so that's how I try to create space with people. I've always been big on creating safe space with anybody that I interact with. Like, I want you to feel comfortable talking to me. I want you to feel comfortable opening up to me. That's something that I hold very sacred. And so to create that space for others, it still turns around and creates space for me all over again. It's just like a loop.
I love the beauty of this story for many, many reasons. The first one is because I know the power of being an adult and the impact we can have on children, and how a gift and an instruction continues to is your guiding light.
Absolutely.
And then I had a favorite teacher. Well, I've had a couple of favorite teachers actually. But then to have a teacher in your formative years that also give you additional space to stand and speak. I know you say you were a textbook introvert.
Textbook.
And growing up, most people would not believe. I mean, you probably would, because you have also learned to present yourself publicly. But I was a seen and well, sometimes not seen, but definitely a seen and not heard child, because I lived in my thoughts. I loved reading books. My favorite time was alone time with me and my thoughts and my fantasies and my future and my readings and things of nature. And yet a lot of people, I thought I was not shy, but I was quiet. I mean, but a deep quietness. And when a teacher or an adult nudges you and gives you that permission to share what you've been thinking, that's powerful. That is so powerful.
Yes, yep.
And I've always enjoyed that, to hear that from classic textbook introverts.
I mean, I didn't realize I didn't realize how much of an introvert I was.
Yeah.
And the thing, like you said, she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
So I got the opportunity for 4 years with her. I got the opportunity to stand before crowds of people. And I wasn't performing, and that's the thing, I wasn't performing my own work. I was performing the works of Black writers like James Weldon Johnson, Black writers like that, and their work. And building up that confidence, like building up that courage. Like I always say, if it wasn't for her, I don't know that there would be a Kezia the poet.
Wow.
And I made sure she passed away a few years ago, and I made sure I let her know before she passed how important she was to me and my journey as a spoken word artist. Just because I don't know that it would have been if it wasn't for her, or it wouldn't have been the same way if it wasn't for her.
Well, we send love and light to her in the eternal.
Amen.
We thank Miss Bennett for seeing in you what was there.
Absolutely.
What was there. So once we get into the high school, college, and after the adulting, let's talk about how you became very quickly just hot on the Memphis scene, and then how that has translated as you have moved to other cities, traveled the country, and been on some big stages.
Man, so with Memphis, my first open mic, it was, and I don't know if it's still going on today, but it was called Poetry, Rhythm, and Soul. And at the time, they were just starting out, and at the time, the open mics were in this church basement. It was this church in Midtown. I can't think of the name of the church, but it was.
Is it First Congo? I wonder if it's First Congo.
No, it wasn't. It was down the street from there, though. It wasn't far from there. It was kind of in the Cooper Young district.
Okay.
It was down the street from there, and so it was the quintessential open mic, right? It's kind of dark in there. You got a live band. You got somebody on the bongos. Actually, and you mentioned Jamon Bullock. His dad plays upright bass.
Yes.
He was one of the musicians.
Wow. And as a matter of fact, I'm wearing one of Jamon's tees. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, the creative spirit here. And his father was playing the upright bass.
His father was playing the upright bass.
Ekpe typically was always somewhere in the Cooper Young on the bongos. But so that was truly a classic.
And it was just, small. It was smaller space. So it's pretty intimate. It gave all the speakeasy vibes. It was the quintessential open mic. And I honestly ended up on the open mic list by accident because a friend of mine at the time, she was going to do some of her work. And and I think I had read to her a poem or two that I had written, but I hadn't shared with anybody. But I read it to her, and she was like, "That's really, really good." And so we went to the open mic a few weeks later, I think, and she was like, "You should perform your poem." And I'm like, "What poem?" She was like, "The one you read to me over the phone." I'm like, "No, no, thank you." And she was like, "Well, I already put your name on the open mic list." What could I do? I was already on the list.
You were already on the list.
So,
and there we go, toe in the water, because you've already been performing other poets, classic poet, classic writers, but now you're sharing publicly through your voice, your words. Toe in the water. Did you just start swimming straight away?
I did. I think I got invited a couple places like right after that.
Oh wow!
It just started, and since then, oh man. You remember when New Direction had Soul Cafe?
Yes.
I was at Soul Cafe pretty often.
I hosted, I think me and Michael Adrian Davis, I think we posted one or two, RJ group. Yeah. Yes.
I was over there pretty frequently. And more like churches started inviting me and like conferences, and it just kind of grew from there. And at the time, I didn't even know Memphis had a poetry scene. When I really was kind of getting into it, this was the early 2000s. I didn't know Memphis really had like a poetry. Like there were people, like you had your Inner City South, and you had different
Precious Cargo. You had
like
we've had the waves of it, and it's always underground. It's always underground.
It's
always underground.
Right.
Yeah, Fat
And so
Mac.
I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of it that much. I
yeah,
didn't think Memphis had a poetry scene. I knew places like DC had one. I knew places
yeah,
like Atlanta, LA, New York,
yeah,
they had one, but I didn't know I didn't know that Memphis
yeah,
had one. And so I think honestly, I think Poetry Rhythm and Soul played a huge part in, developing. And then I think what came along, Hype Life
yes.
came along with
Which is
Darius.
yes, Darius
And
Fat Mac
right.
Clayton.
And
Yeah.
then so things just started
Mhm.
kind of growing from there. And I'm blessed to have been a part of that, just to see it grow and to be able to participate in different poetry things. I didn't realize I was there during a formative time. I
Yeah.
just thought, I'm like,
It's
oh,
so beautiful.
yeah,
It's so
I'm like,
beautiful
this is just
because
another
when I
poetry.
first came back from Detroit, and that would have been the 90s, there was a
Mhm.
hot poetry scene. Precious Cargo was existing. This is the
Mhm.
jazz club on
Right,
Bill
right. And I
Street,
think I just missed Precious
and
Cargo.
it vanished.
Yeah,
And
I
then
just missed it.
it's like then about a decade later, then it's the groundswell came
Mhm.
again. And I think that having people like yourself, Michelle Montgomery would have been from the previous era, and
Okay.
you were very reminiscent. So like when I would show up, I'll be like, oh my God, the energies. Ah. So one thing I loved about you, because I was also that you put your faith forward a lot, even in what we would consider, just open mic, everybody saying whatever they were feeling, thinking,
Mhm.
emoting. But you were very astute at wordplay and
Right.
being able to paint the picture of faith in such a bold way.
Mhm.
So when you begin to go to other open mics across the country, particularly when you relocated, can you tell me about those experiences and what did they kind of like? Whoa, first of all, they love Memphis. Let's establish that everybody got a love for Memphis. But what were they saying about you specifically?
So a big thing that I got, especially when I went to New York, or when I went to Philly, or when I went to LA, the big thing that I think a lot of people focused on was the wordplay.
Yeah.
I can't count how many people have said things like, Matter, somebody said it to me the other night. I didn't like poetry until I heard your poetry. I was like, I
You
said,
made a believer.
I'm like, I don't know how to feel about that, but I think I'm supposed to say thank you.
So
But
thank
and
you.
I understand that there's some pretentious poets out
True
there
that.
who,
True that.
and that's with any art form,
That is true.
that exists. But I don't know. It was just so important for me to, and once again, I can thank Miss Bennett for this. It was so important for me to make genuine connections with people while I'm on stage. People are used to getting talked at, not talked to, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it was really important for me to make. So I made eye contact with people. I would point at people. I just on certain parts. I would like look at people, point at people, and just make them feel a part. And always made myself available after the event was over for
Yeah.
people to come to talk, or we could pray, or whatever. And that I feel like that kind of added to it as a whole. But the big thing that a lot of people, they were like, "You from Memphis with wordplay like that?" I'm like, "Ooh, don't sleep on Memphis like that. Don't do
Oh
that.
yeah,
Don't do
because
that.
y'all don't know.
Don't do that. Memphis got
Oh
some of the
wow.
best talent in the world. Don't do
Yeah.
that."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If they understood how much wordplay we have, that sometimes can get hidden by the larger, I'll say, the stereotypical portrayals.
oh yeah, for sure,
Yeah, it's like
for
we
sure,
some deep people down in this delta,
absolutely,
at the mouth of the
absolutely,
delta. Yes, yes, yes,
yes,
we are. I
yes,
mean, layers to it.
absolutely,
Layers,
yes.
actually. Now here it is, because I am.
Mhm.
Once you started hitting big cities, and your wordplay, as I said, has always been masterful to me. Um, you had an opportunity, your first opportunity to hit the stage with some lights, some cameras, some action. Let's talk about that.
So in 2000, well, both in 2011 and 2013, I was invited to Rhetoric, and that was from P4CM, that's Passion for Christ movement. And that at the time they were the biggest Christian poetry platform in the world.
Wow.
So they invited me to come, and it was I'm like, okay, this is
Yeah.
big. We were in this church. I think the church was Cottonwood Church,
Okay.
in LA or in the LA area. And I think the night in 2013, I know for sure, there were like 3,500 people in the audience.
Wow.
And that was the
That's
biggest.
big from a coffee house speakeasy
That
where we
was
can almost touch the walls when we're
right.
talking. Yeah.
We had green rooms. We had
Woo.
uh, different jewelry if we wanted to wear it on stage, different stuff. We had runners. It was a lot. The line was wrapped, like they had food trucks outside. The lines were wrapped around the church double time. Like
Wow.
it was, man, it was a big deal.
Is that the one that went viral?
Uh-huh.
Can we talk about that poem, which is masterful?
So
And maybe you can even spit a little bit, just a little taste.
So you're definitely talking about the poem about forgiveness, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I don't know how. Well, I don't want to say I don't know how it went viral, but I think I just came at it with a different perspective with it, and so people just they were drawn to it.
Yeah.
And I think as we are in my particular age group specifically, we're kind of coming to terms with our humanity, coming to terms with the humanity of our parents and the people that kind of help raise us, and realizing that they are fully human, and capable of error, and just coming to terms and coming to grips with that as we grow further into our adulthood. So I think I was coming with that perspective. But forgiveness.
Even if it says 2 or 3 lines, just give me a little
2 or 3
taste.
lines. Pain is something you have. Hurt is something you are. And adding even more fuel to the flame, hurt has a face and a name. So that's a little bit. Just a little bit.
They got to go to YouTube, Google, forgiveness. Yeah. Even after that, you began to really, hit rock a couple of, stages with the mic. What were some of your favorites?
So one of the things that I was blessed to do, I was a co-leader of a Christian spoken word group called True Voices. And so True Voices was headquartered in New York, and had chapters in several cities, including DC, Philly, in Jersey, in Chicago, in Cincinnati, and of course in New York. And we would be invited, our group would be invited to different churches, and we would do poems individually. We had a few group pieces. We created events and stuff. And that was a whole thing. I think that was a pinnacle in each of our lives.
Wow.
And so I feel like that in its way opened doors for more poetry events. And so, I've been somewhere everywhere. I performed for Dorinda Clark Cole in Detroit. I've been to LA, Philly, Chicago, lots in DC, lots in New York, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, St. Louis, just Alabama,
15 years.
just
Over
all
15
over.
years.
Yeah, for 15 years.
For 15 years. How has poetry changed your life as far as, and I'm trying to say this in a way, when it comes to love relationships? How has it impacted, changed, or colored your life?
I think it helped me realize the importance. I talked about it a little bit earlier, the importance of safe space. I also think it showed me the importance of empathy. We really don't have any idea what people are experiencing. We don't have any idea of what people have gone through. We have no idea of their current experiences, how they're handling it. We don't have any idea about people's mental health. We don't know. We don't really know. We know how a person presents, but we really don't know what a person is going through. And so safe space is everything. Trust is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to want, and somebody said I carry it naturally, maybe, but more so, I think it's something that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than the lady coming up behind me in the grocery line who decides to tell me the whole story about her divorce, and I don't know her from Adam, and I'm like, I'm, I'm sorry to hear that.
Right.
Like, it's more than that though.
Right.
It's especially when, like, at True Voices events at the end of the night, we would have like an altar call, and people could come up and somebody would pray with them.
Mm-hmm.
And my prayers typically were like hugs. I would hug and I'll be like, tell me what's going on, or tell me what you want to tell me. And they would tell me
Yes.
something. And I will hug them and pray with them. And it's different when you feel somebody breaking down in your arms. It's different.
Yes.
It's different. It does something to you. It
Yes.
impacts your life forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that just
Mm-hmm.
that empathy and genuinely caring for people.
Mm-hmm.
I literally, this might be a little personal, but I had somebody to gracefully exit my life
Mm.
because they felt like they could not reciprocate my kindness.
Ooh.
And I'm just,
Wow.
I had to
Wow.
sit with that.
Yeah.
And that's no big up to me, but I'm just,
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to sit with that,
Yeah.
And so I'm realizing maybe this is not something that's very common. Maybe
Yeah.
this is not something that a lot of people get to experience authentically. And
Yeah.
so it's no big up to me at all. Um, it's definitely God, but that's what it taught me.
Yeah.
Definitely empathy and compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and trustworthiness.
Wow. I
Mhm.
love it. And of course, you've captured a lot of that in your work. You
I
have
really try
3 spoken
to. I
word
really try
albums,
to.
poetry book, an
Yeah.
anthology.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I just got to show them this very unique cover that I want you to explain to me.
Sure.
It's your new book,
No, this.
Girls
So it's an album.
album. I'm sorry. Yes, the new album
Yeah.
is Girls and Elephants.
Mhm.
First of all, the title and the cover,
Uh-huh.
the album cover.
Mhm.
Can you? The only thing I can think about is that both of us never forget. Women, girls never forget. Elephants never forget. I was like, I need answers. Okay, tell me about this title and this very. I gotta show it again. Let me show it one more time. This is the album cover for your new spoken word album, Girls and Elephants.
Elephants,
Okay,
yes.
Kezia.
All right.
I need answers.
So Girls and Elephants, the reason I came with that title comes from, so what a lot of people might not know is that herds of elephants are led by the matriarch. They're led by a woman. So she is the leader. She is the one that they turn to, the one that they trust to lead them the right way. She's very emotionally intelligent. She always has a beautiful relationship with her children, and everybody trusts her. So she leads the way, right? And I also think about the phrase "the elephant in the room," meaning the big thing in the room that nobody's talking about. Everybody sees it, everybody's aware, but nobody talks about it. I think that's women. I think that's girls. I think we have long been leaders. We have long been enough. We have been intelligent enough, worth it enough, beautiful enough, all of that enough. We always have been, but tend to get kind of scooted to the side. Oh, you're a woman. Oh, okay. Well, you're. That's where we live. That's the society that we live in. But women have always been capable. Women have always who the world relies on the woman. A woman is capable. Many women are capable of bringing life into the world. We populate the earth, like we carry the life and bring it into the world. And we've always been capable of doing and leading, and everything. And so we are both girls and elephants.
Wow.
So that's where the title comes from.
And of course, it is now available. Let them know where they can support you.
Listen, you can go everywhere and get this project. You can go to Apple Music, whatever your preferred platform is, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon Music, wherever you get your streaming music from, you can get Girls and Elephants.
I'm going to be sharing a single from the new album, which is called Blessings for the Daughters. I love it. Totally beautiful. Totally
Thank
beautiful.
you.
And also, speaking about Blessings for the Daughters, coming up in 2022, you've got some exciting things. Let's
I
talk about that.
do. So in 2022, I will be releasing my very first children's book.
Yeah.
It's called Close and Away, and is the main character is a little girl named Nevaeh who is 7 years old,
Mhm.
and Nevaeh is talking about how her family remembers her brother who passed away as a baby.
Wow.
And so it's a child's story of dealing with grief and how different families tend to do that. Different families tend to deal with grief in different ways. And so this is from a 7 year old's perspective, just the questions and her mom explaining things to her. And it's one of those books. I talked about big emotions early in the interview, and I think I'm the type of person that thinks things should be explained to kids.
Mhm.
They shouldn't have to dig through on their own certain stuff. Even these big subjects, these hard
Yeah.
subjects,
Yeah.
should be explained to them. So it's a book that explores that.
And I can tell that this really comes from your youth advocacy.
Mhm.
Definitely something that is very important to you. And what work are you doing in Maryland at this time?
At this time, I am a mentor. It is it's an interesting place to be in. It's an interesting place. In the past, I've worked at the Child Abuse Center. I've also worked with young adults with mental illness. I've worked with young adults who were escaping trafficking. I've worked with homeless youth in different ways. And so, children and youth will always have my heart. Always, always, always. And so I'm glad that I could continue to be able to, at least from a mentoring standpoint, able to do some work like that.
All right. Well, we're coming up to the end of this. Of course, we're going to be looking forward to her new book in 2022. Blessings to you as you continue to work in a space of art, community, and advocacy. And congratulations on your new spoken word album, Girls and
you.
Elephants. And thank you for the explanation because I was like,
Absolutely.
because I was like, we never forget, but that part too. Yes, but truly, I like the fact about leadership and also sometimes we're the elephant in the room. But one more question before we go, Kezia. I know you're not homesick, but what do you miss about Memphis?
I miss the food. Lord have mercy. I miss the food. It ain't. Ooh, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I'm sorry. The DMV ain't hitting on nothing when it comes to you just can't beat Memphis food. You can't.
Yeah, it's a
Right?
lot of love and soul in the food. It's a lot of love and soul in the
Yep.
food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I truly do appreciate you, Kezia,
Thank you.
for gracing us with your presence here on the Christie Taylor Show. And as a bonus, I want you to just set up for them as we do an extended play of the show. This amazing new single from Girls and Elephants. Let's talk about this particular track.
All right. Blessings for the Daughters is a track to all the girls who did not have maybe the structure that they needed at home, did not have some of the things that they needed at home. And it was the onus was on them to figure it out for themselves, to get it on their own, to navigate life without many resources or any backup plans. This is for the daughters.
And here it is.
For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, This is a blessing for the daughters. Yeah.
This is a blessing for the daughters who had to figure it out on their own, whose benchmarks into womanhood were not recorded on any wall or met with any advice about where to go from here, whose courage and strength served as book covers for stories woven with neglect and fear. This is a blessing for the daughters who had to grow up too fast, who saw the absence or gaps in care as rickety, unstable bridges they had to, unassisted, pass. There are only two options when developing: to grow up or to grow through. This blessing is for the daughters who did not have the choice to choose. God bless the daughters who have a hard time accepting help, because throughout her whole life she could only really rely on herself. This is for the daughters who could not carve out time to properly grieve. The lack of capacity or presence or willingness, so little room for reprieve, for loss and void, were much more consistent companions than her family. God bless the daughters who fights against her sadness, who fights to keep her balance, who fights against her malice, who fights when there's no challenge, whose tears could fill up gallons, whose troubles could fill up pallets. Yes, God bless the daughters whose smile can silence gallows, whose light be borealis, whose past be looking like Shaq, but her future be looking like Palace, 'cause she knows that sometimes it be like that. But this won't always be her status, sis. We out here. You are seen and felt. Don't forget it. Learning the lessons, praying for blessings, and making it happen. I heard somebody call it magic. Somebody else called it tragic. But girl, the way your will is set up, every call is a call to action. And society be casting shadows when your war paint don't match their canvas, trying to decide how to address the art you are and get you to adjust according to their standards. But you know better. And you know weather and how it changes in patterns. Yeah, you know better. And you know that you're cut from a different fabric that's worn, tear-stained and tattered, but still waving victoriously in the wind after every battle. Your honor is not in your suffering and loss, but girl, your tenacity and courage is your banner. God bless the daughters.
For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters, yeah. For the daughters, this is a blessing for the daughters.